Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Dr. Wally, and I have a special guest with us here. Yusuf is here to tell us about his experience. He has scored an amazing score of what on step two?
70.
270. Excellent. So, Yusuf, we spoke a little bit briefly right before this and kind of familiarized ourselves with each other. But if you can give us and the audience a brief introduction of yourself and who you are.
Sure. Thank you for hosting me in. I'm very glad to be here and help people during the prep as soon as I can. My name is Yusuf Shalabi. I'm a medical intern in Egypt, and I have 2 months left to graduate. I took my step one on September 2024, and I took my step two in 2026 in January. I saved my score report last Wednesday, and I got blessed with a 270. So hopefully people will learn from my experience as much as I can.
Good, good. And tell us in brief so what was your step one prep like? Because sometimes a lot of people assume that you just need to rush through step one and then get to step two and focus on that. How has your experience for step one been?
So a lot of people told me that step one foundation is very important for step two. Like this leads to this. Some people thought of taking step two before step one, and that was a bad idea because in my own experience, yeah, it checks out. Step one is very important for step two because step two builds on step one. You basically learn the basic science, how this leads to that, the pathophysiology and all that stuff. And then step two, you learn how to manage and fix this pathophysiology. So if you don't understand the pathophysiology, the treatment's not going to make sense to you. Okay, you're not going to understand how this algorithm developed or why we chose this treatment and not that treatment. So I think step one is very, very important for step two. As a matter of fact, like I took step one literally to my heart. Like my NBME scores in step one reached 92% on the latest NBME 31. That's how I took care of my step one preparation. Well, it took me like 10 months or so. Some people took it in 6 months, but I feel like, no, I'm going to take my time to nail down the step one concepts. So I don't take much time for step two. And I started step two like 2 months after I got my score report for step one. So everything was still fresh in my mind. And that's important too.
Good, good. So what resources and what was your approach for studying for step one? You mentioned you were still a medical student, all these things. So how did you approach all these things?
Yeah, so I had like a gap of 6 months between my medical school after I finished my final exams and the start of internship, and that's a period where I started like listening to the lectures for step one. But to be completely fair, before this period, I already had first aid as my companion throughout the 5 years of medical school. Like I was already aware of the USMLE Step one and the first aid and that stuff. And since I joined the medical school, I was always look up my first aid book for any chapter I take in medical school. For example, if I took biochem, I read biochem from first aid. So I was already familiar with how Step one present things, and I liked it actually because it gives me like the solid points. I just needed these high yield points so I could ace my exams in medical school. But my dedicated or officially, I started my step one preparation after I finished all my exams in medical school, and right before my internship. Like there was 6 months gap. I finished my BMB and pathoma lectures in them, and then I completed my UWorld. So what the first half of my internship, I had 2 year internship. The first half, the first 6 months of internship is where I finished my UWorld, took my NBME, booked for eligibility, and took the exam.
Good, good, good. Do you feel like the question banks, specifically, I guess UWorld in your case, has helped significantly build and allow you to comfortably pass step one?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, UWorld, like it's very beautiful and explanations are really good. Like everything starts making sense after reading the UWorld explanation. And I feel like it's very vital to read the explanations and understand it, then listen to the lectures. Because most people I've mentored before during their step one prep, they always like ask me, who would I listen to? I spent like 7 hours listening and 2 hours solving questions. I think no, the opposite is a more effective one. You listen for 2 hours and solve for 7 hours. Not the opposite. Because solving your world really is going to teach you how to think like they want you to think. What mistakes do you make? What kind of mistakes you make? Do you still have a deficit in certain knowledge or not? Because sometimes we feel like this system is weak, but when I solve on it, I feel like no, everything is fine. Just in my head, the anxiety whatsoever. So the best one to tell you this is your world. So I think your world. It's really good to go your strengths and weaknesses. What systems do I still need to work on, and what systems are fine by me? I don't need to listen to any more PMB or pathoma lectures on them. So yeah, I think it was very vital. But the MBMs is more important at the end of the preparation because that's going to tell you if you're going to be able to navigate the exam or not. Because the people who put the MBME are the same people who put the real deal. So you will just build the foundation for you in order to be able to understand the MBME material.
Good, good, excellent. And obviously that translated into you comfortably passing with a strong baseline in step one. But if you were to go back in time, is there something you would change when it came to your step one preparation?
To be honest, no. I'll just take a little less time. I took my time, like I really stretched a little bit more in understanding your world explanation and the stuff. I took tons of notes, and I feel like it didn't matter much the notes at the end of the world. The MBMs matter, and yeah. So I'll spend just less time with your world, more time with MBMs because I feel the exam really MBMs reflected the exam really well. Your world just gave me a foundation, but at the end of the story, no, I don't feel any regret of anything whatsoever.
Good, good, excellent. So then you mentioned you took a 2 month break and then started looking into studying for step two. So can you take us through your process, how you approached and tackled step two that ultimately translated into a score of 270?
Yeah, so basically my my number one approach in preparation during step one and step two, and even during my medical school, was consistency. So there are days where it would feel like, "Ah, nah, I'm not gonna be able to study today," and there are moments where you feel like everything is flow, you're in a flow state, like they say. So what matters is consistency. So I took care of that part. I always take a scheduled breaks. Like I'm not gonna be wake up in the morning and feel like not studying and like just go with my mood. No, you have to study against your mood. Okay, so consistency is the key. What I did was spend most of my time like from I took it. I began in like last December 1st of January, but it was very superficial. I was still like not in the mood for study, so I started off with 10 questions per day of UWorld, just like starting to get myself into the zone gradually. And then by the start of February or March, yeah, between February and March, where things began to spiral a little bit faster. I began tackling like 30 to 40 questions of UWorld per day. Some days I felt like I'm not going to be able to do more than 10. That's fine. What matters is consistency. After finishing UWorld, I finished UWorld in August. Okay. It took me a lot of time because of the variability in the number of questions per day. That was a mistake, to be honest. If you are able to do 40 questions per day or 30 questions per day, you have to be consistent. But as much as you get lazy, you get tired, it's fine. Don't stop completely. It's okay to feel like you're not going to be able to do even 5 questions per day. That's fine. After finishing Word in August, I started taking my baseline NBMEs and tackled AMBOSS Bank and CMS Forms till I took my exam in June, basically. So yeah, I feel like my dedicated started at the end of September.
Good, good. So it's interesting because you just mentioned and we just had a like a group coaching session where someone asked the question of what are CMS forms? Everyone's familiar with NBMEs, but can you tell us a little bit more about CMS forms, whether they were beneficial to you and how you use them?
Yeah, sure. So CMS forms are abbreviations for clinic and master series. So basically, they're written by the same people who wrote MBMEs. Okay, and those people who are actually writing the real deal. So similar minds, similar style of thinking, and even similar explanation. I saw explanation verbatim copy pasted from CMS forms in the MBMEs explanation as well. What's the difference? Well, CMS forms actually are like very easy and straightforward. Okay, so they're not convoluted or vague like MBMEs, and certainly not like the real deal at all. So the style is not reflective of the real deal, but the concepts are. I remember seeing a questions like it was a very bizarre question on a CMS form about if you got stung by tentacles of a squid. I was like, why would I care about if someone bit by squid? And I just skipped the question, and it actually appeared in real deal. So that was very surprising for me. So like, yeah, CMS forms concepts reflect the exam. You just it helps in like understanding what they want you to know. Okay, so CMS forms definitely helps with that, and of course the pattern recognition. Like if they want to ask about DKA, they're gonna present a child with history of weight loss, for example, and now he has abdominal pain and confusion. So if you're not familiar with this style of pattern, you're gonna spend so much time in a question trying to navigate what this kid has. But if you saw a question on CMS forms and then on MDMEs, they're gonna present like a longer question or more vague one, but you still see these same clues like a kid with history of weight loss despite good appetite, and now he has abdominal pain and confusion. Yeah, that rings a bell. That was DKA. So if you see down the choice, you see normal saline and insulin, and things start to make sense. So CMS forms helps with these. But in terms of question style, no, it's easy and straightforward, and most people get high scores like from 85 to 90%. And that's actually a good sign. It means that you're nailing down the concepts. Doesn't necessarily mean you're wasting your time. It means just the concepts are in your head and you're doing fine. Yeah.
Yeah, good, good. So you mentioned that you're also reviewing UWorld questions. Can you take us step by step how you kind of approach using UWorld specifically for, step two and ultimately leading to your score of 270?
Yeah, so UWorld, I used UWorld to really study the concepts well. I know they're not reflective of the real deal. They do not reflect your performance on the exam. They just teach you the concept that they want you to know. So I was just focusing on learning the UWorld concepts really well. So whenever I encounter a question, I read the explanation, I read the table, I read the algorithm whatsoever, and I use ChatGPT, sometimes DeepSeek, to help me understand if the explanation was not sufficient for me, I would navigate through the AI and explain to me what the question wants me to know, why I did pick this up. Like I had a question before about necrotizing enterocolitis. I didn't even recognize it was necrotizing enterocolitis. Wow, how is it a nick? So I just read the explanation, but the explanation, it didn't give me what I wanted to know. There was a gap in my knowledge that I noticed, and the explanation didn't navigate it well. So I took the question, posted on ChatGPT, and asked it, like, how is it nick? I thought of as an answer choice. Why is it wrong and why nick is correct? And ChatGPT beautifully gives me like a table, like summarizing this and that and comparing each to other. I would ask it to create the differential chart for me. So what I mean by all this is just take your time to navigate the questions and understand the concepts well. It really helps forward in the preparation. And I think it plays a huge part of having already a high baseline. I took a baseline EBME 9 and I got 251. So already in the zone of 250 plus. So I think your work plays a huge role in this, of course, with the feedback, the foundation that I had from step one. So yeah, just every phase you're in, make sure to tackle it, not perfectly, but like take your time. Don't rush into things. So yeah, the important thing is like tackle the word concepts well, understand the explanation well, use AI even to help you navigate its explanations. I didn't listen to any lectures in step two. I didn't even use PMB. I didn't touch Divine Intervention podcast. I didn't use any of that. I just went straight into reading. And for me personally, reading helps in reading explanations, because I pick the things that I want to know, based on what, like I told you, that why is it that, why is it not that. Always ask yourself, always have the critical thinking, and of course, passion helps. I love medicine, so UWorld was pretty fun for me to learn this way.
Good, good, excellent. It's a nice way of integrating AI as well. A lot of people are
Yeah.
concerned and don't know how to integrate it, but you beautifully mentioned that. What's your opinion on UWorld being, a learning tool versus assessment tool? Some people want to delay using UWorld up until the very end when they reviewed everything, watched the videos. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, even for step one, like step one is basic, but UWorld is very vital to begin at day one, at day zero even. I have a lot of friends who ask me, and they tell me, how should I start? I always tell them, UWorld, just read UWorld. Open the first question of UWorld in any system you want, any system you like, read the explanation, study it. You don't need anything besides UWorld. For learning tool, it's a learning tool. For assessment tool, no, it's not an assessment tool at all. It's different. It tends to confuse you. It tends to present like everything makes sense for a certain disease, and then they throw a word that like doesn't make sense or it's not aligning well with the disease. So you have to rethink it. That's how we want you to learn. And they ask about nitty-bit details, especially with AMBOSS. We're going to navigate AMBOSS later on. But sometimes you think like, you don't remove this abscess except when it's more than 3 centimeters. If it's less than 3 centimeters, don't remove it. No, NBME doesn't care about this kind of at all. I didn't encounter any question where I have to memorize those numbers. But UWorld, no, they tend you to know. They want you to know these numbers. It's just a learning tool. Yeah, they want you to know the details. They will ask about everything in their algorithm, their tables. But the exam doesn't really care about those details. Those details makes you, like a better clinician, have more clinical sense. But the exam is more like about the general stuff. Your APCs, you should give IV fluids first, intubation first, if the patient has GCS below 8, for example, that kind of stuff. But yeah, PWORD is not an assessment tool. It's a learning tool and should start it on day zero. Very
Good.
important.
And I have my own experience with UWorld and AMBOSS, but you mentioned that you used AMBOSS. I mean, tell me about your experience with that.
Yeah, so my initial plan was just UWorld and tackle AMBOSS blocks on my weaknesses. But then I think my notes, I don't like passive reading. I think passive reading is really a waste of time, and they didn't add much to my prep. I feel like I read this information, the next day I forget about it completely. And sometimes when you read, you subconsciously leave out details that matter. It's not about you're not reading well or anything. It's just you don't know what's important, what's not. So the questions help you to know what you, yeah, I need to know this information. Focus on this. Take care of that. Oh yeah, that makes sense now. I remember having a question on meningitis. Like they say, if the patient has an altered status, then you have to do CT. Yeah, that makes sense because altered status could mean there's a mass lesion. But if they have immunodeficiency, you also have to do CT before lumbar puncture. I was like, okay, immunodeficiency, yeah, sure, okay. So I had a question on this on AMBOSS where they mentioned that the patient had an immunodeficiency, some kind of immunodeficiency, and what's next step? I picked LP and it was wrong. I was like, how? Oh, that's why they said immune deficiency in algorithm means you do CT before LP. So I've read it, but I didn't care for it except when I have a question on it. So I'm picking up this example specifically to lead you to know that questions are very important, even more important than reading. So I thought, yeah, no, I'm gonna solve the whole AMBOSS, not just my weaknesses. So I took the latest four CMS. So CMS forms, there are 51 forms. I took the latest four of each subject. I think they're sufficient. The old forms are not. I didn't like them, to be honest. And for AMBOSS, I did the whole Q bank, all 100 questions from 1 to 5. And I think doing more questions for step two specifically helps because it depends on better recognition in clinical scenarios. The more you see, the more it's going to be easier for you.
Good. Yeah. Excellent. Very nice. So when you were preparing for step two, what do you think? Because you mentioned you were working with study groups and peers. What do you think you did differently that you believe actually pushed your score to go that high?
Uh, the ones that pushed me to the limit was changing the way I think about questions. So, in my school, I'm accustomed to memorizing stuff and just, like taking the exam and solving based on my memory. Okay. The USMLE doesn't care about that. It cares about integration. They're always going to give you new scenarios, new concepts. It's expected to see new things on the exam. Normally, as Yusuf, I would feel anxious about this. But initially, I had to solve this problem. I had to see how I'm going to navigate this, how I'm going to remember all those details, and I'm going to see new concepts, how to navigate this new concept, right? So I tried to like take the question stems and reverse engineer using ChatGPT also to give me the clues how they wanted to present this scenario, why they give me this and not that, especially for the NBMEs, because as I mentioned, the NBME minds are the similar minds that put their real deals. So you have to understand them. It's like you're hacking their mindset. You're hacking them. You see how they think. If they want to confuse you, what would they do, right? And I saw that they're really straightforward. Like if they say no, benign abdominal exam, don't pick ultrasound. It's as simple as that. The words sometimes let you to overthink, and yeah, you have to do ultrasound because there was a nitty-bit details I mentioned in the question, but no, NBME is more general than that. As I mentioned, the patient has mild pain, no vomiting, no nausea, benign abdominal exam, no need for that. This is a way of them telling you there's no need for ultrasound. So this is something that was new to me. I didn't realize that every clue in the question matters. Okay, I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, he has something like a pain in his abdomen. Let's pick ultrasound, but no, focus on the other details around this. Focus on the story, the context. Like they mentioned, the patient has mild, it's just mild. It's a mild pain, not severe pain. That makes a difference. Benign abdominal exam, if they want you to pick ultrasound, would mention something like tenderness or rigidity or anything, right? So I didn't notice these clues at first. It wasn't even my mindset. This way I was able to differentiate how if this presentation really deserves an investigation or not. That's the way I was asking myself, does this patient need something? Does this patient need an intervention? What's his problem? What's his chief complaint? I was focusing on the patient, not the disease. That way, I increased my score basically like 20 points from baseline. My baseline was 251. The latest NBME 15 and 16, I got 270 plus. I think the 20 points jump here was understanding the game, understanding how NBME wants you to think. How are they're gonna present clues. You know, if they mention mild, no, it's different from severe pain. If they mention no physical exam finding, it's different from if they have physical exam finding. You have to navigate the story really well. If you understand their mind, understand how you make mistakes. For example, I was overthinking a lot, so no, don't overthink. That's going to solve most of your problems. Of course, if there are knowledge deficits, you're going to solve additional key banks. You have AMBOSS, you have CMS, you have UWorld incorrect. That's fine. But that's only a portion of your mistakes. I think the majority of us makes mistakes because they misinterpret the questions. So the real jump for me was changing the way I interpret the questions, even if it's new scenario. Okay, that's fine. Let's navigate through the answer choices. Try to eliminate the ones you're sure of. And you're left with, like two answers at the end, 50-50%. So it's the more you have a higher chance of scoring, getting this question right because eliminating the other choices. How do you eliminate them? You check for clues. If they mention ultrasound, yeah, abdominal ultrasound. Is there anything with abdomen in this patient? No, there's not. Okay, I think it doesn't need ultrasound. That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Good, 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 excellent. And you mentioned kind of establishing that strong baseline, step one, and increasing your points. And obviously, people can be at 220, for example, and boost their score by 20 points using this mindset. But what do you think was the biggest mistake, whether step one or step two or both of them, early on in your prep? And how did you fix kind of the approach to that?
My biggest regret for step two was not doing the word incorrects early on. That have helped me a lot in my baseline. I took your word first pass and jumped straight into the NBMEs and AMBOSS kind of stuff. But I was forgetting the information that I studied early on. So if I ran back in time, I'd have done the reward incorrects before anything else. Incorrects plus marked, the flagged questions too. But those are the ones that I had problem on my first pass. If I solved the question correct on the first pass and I didn't flag it, then I had no problem with the concept. It's already ingrained in my head, no problem. But if I made a mistake on a question or flagged it, that means that I had a problem with it. I had a gap in it. I should solve it again. Especially that I wasn't reading notes, like I mentioned, because I didn't like reading notes. So the best way to maintain the knowledge well is to solve the questions again. And not all questions, just the incorrect. So that was my biggest regret, to be honest. I solved the work incorrect during my dedicated. I should have done it before the dedicated. Would have helped me a lot. For step one, though, I didn't have a problem. I mean, I don't know, maybe because I read the first state during med school, I don't know. But my first pass in step one, UWorld was an 89% or so. And I feel like I didn't need a second run. I just jumped straight into the NBMEs, and my NBME scores were high. It was from 85% baseline to 92% at the end of the prep. And my new free 120 step one was 91%. So I feel like I already have the good knowledge. Actually, the regret I had step one is not taking the exam earlier because I felt like I already had the foundation to tackle the exam and pass on first attempt. But like the conscious inside me, like no, take your time, don't rush into things, don't regret. So no regrets here. But yeah,
Good,
that's it.
good. And a lot of people that are watching now in the future, they, like you mentioned, get emotional around the concepts of taking NBME and they get very concerned whether it's the score they were hoping for, whether they feel that they're running out of time because the score on the NBME was not what they were anticipating. So how did you approach NBMEs and the scores you got from NBMEs, both from an emotional standpoint and strategic standpoint?
Okay, so from an emotional standpoint, you ask yourself what's the worst case scenario? Like I got 240s and I'm aiming for 270 plus, or I got 220s and I'm aiming for 270 plus. So what? You're still in your prep, right? You still have time to tackle those weaknesses. If you have knowledge gaps, solve more questions. I mean, I don't think there's a difference between someone who got 220, sorry, and 270. The only difference is that this one worked on his mistakes and this one just took the exam, to be honest. I know people who failed step one, and I know people actually who didn't get their target score in step two. And the common mistakes that I saw in most people is that they don't work on their mistakes. They just say, yeah, no, okay, this is my ability. No, it's not your ability. Everyone can get to 70 plus. Of course, there's some luck in it, but yeah, luck plays a factor, to be honest. But you can get as close as you want to your target score by understanding your weaknesses and managing burnout. People get burnout and I feel like, man, I'm gonna take this exam. I'm done. Okay, that's fine, but don't expect that scores are gonna change drastically. You didn't work on them, right? You're not aiming for 260 plus, and you're getting 230 or 240s on NBMEs and expect something miraculous will happen on exam day. Even if there are people that post their stories on Reddit or whatsoever that mentioned that my predicted score was 240 and I got 270, and when people are like, wow, no, that's an optimism bias. It doesn't happen. Just an outlier. If you bet about the normal distribution curve, this is an outlier. People get much higher, much lower than predicted scores. It's an outlier. Don't get disappointed by people who get their lower than predicted, and don't get disappointed by people or even optimistic by people who get higher than predicted. Most people get within their predicted. It's called predictive for a reason, and it's an AI tool that's well tested, and the MMEs are well tested approach. So you have to understand your mistakes well. So from emotional standpoint, I was keep telling myself, what's worst that could happen? Just take the exam like any other exam, and like you're doing well, you're doing fine. Even if you had mistakes, yeah, let's study those mistakes, right? That's from emotional standpoint. From a strategic standpoint, yeah, like I mentioned, you have to understand your mistakes. Don't get lazy about it. Read every explanation well. and use AI if needed to navigate this explanation, especially that NBME explanation were not like high quality like UWorld. So AI played a huge role. You have AI now that's like, like it's a very easy tool to use. The people in the past who didn't have AI, what were they doing to understand the explanation? They have to run a long track. You have AI in your hand, and it's literally like helps you in a matter of seconds to understand the question, which is amazing. So use it to your advantage. And from emotional standpoint, don't feel discouraged. It's okay on the first NBME to run out of time. It's okay to forget things. It's okay to score much lower than you want, because this is the first thing. If I start a new game and the first boss is like, it's very difficult for me, it's okay. I'm gonna learn new skills, add more strengths to my weapons, and eventually I'm gonna be able to beat him. It's the same thing. It's a game. You start at level 1. Maybe it's not sufficient. Yeah, I'm gonna increase my level to level 2, level 3. But the most important thing is work on weaknesses in a correct way. Like not just don't pay much effort, but understand. Make sure that your effort is going in the correct direction. So ask people, ask around. If you have mentors, let them help you. If you wanna post it on social media, see what the people think, it's fine. I asked a lot of people who scored like in 260s and 270s. I was always taking their advices about my prep. Should I do this? Should I do that? That's fine. But the important thing is also understand yourself. Like what works for me, because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you, doesn't necessarily work for another person, right? So you have to understand what works best for you. Some people like notes reading. Okay, if notes are gonna help you, like cement, make the formation make more sense and start scores higher, read notes. You have inner circle notes, you have your own personal notes. That's okay. But for me, the notes didn't work for me at all. So I knew that if I read notes, I'm gonna waste time. So I was focusing on doing more questions. So from emotional and strategic standpoint, they're integrated in the sense that don't feel discouraged and always put the mindset that it's okay to make a mistake, but it's not okay to learn from those mistakes. Okay.
Good, good. Yeah. You mentioned, strategy when answering questions as well. So how do you, in brief, how do you conclude what the answer is? And let's say you get stuck between two answers. What's your
Mm.
decision-making framework? So how do you get to the right answer is my question.
The one that worked for me the best was asking myself, what do I know about this and what do I know about this? So for example, if I was stuck between disease X and disease Y, okay, they're very close. Like I don't know what to pick. I ask myself, okay, mental pause for a second. What do I know about disease X? It's 1, 2, 3. What do I know about disease Y? It's 1, 2, 3. And 4. Yeah, there is 4. There is 4 in the question. Yeah, they mentioned something about that number 4. Okay, maybe it's more disease Y than disease X. So it's not necessarily my own mistake, and I think people do it too. That you focus on the question, you read it like 3 to 4 times, trying to reach the answer. It's not going to come up automatically. It's not an autopilot. So I said, well, okay, think about the answers, not the questions. Read the answer choices and ask yourself, what do I know about this, and what do I know about this? Okay, and then something is gonna like you light up. That's what I'm talking about better cognition. The more you do questions, the more understand the better cognition, the patterns of every disease, how they're gonna present, even if they are similar on some level. Like for example, leg calvi percy disease and slip captive femoral epiphysis, they're very similar. They were similar to me. Okay, I always had confusion between them. Yeah, of course, age, this higher age than this, but sometimes I get the age where it makes, like I'm 8 years old, it could be leg calvi, it could be slip captive femoral epiphysis. What should I do? So like, there's something in slip captive femoral epiphysis that really is a buzzword, and you don't see it often except when you do much questions, that their legs are always externally rotated. They don't mention this in LSVE. Okay, so like, yeah, of course, if I saw externally rotated, that could mean a slip captive femoral epiphysis. So if I didn't notice it on the question, that's fine, but I ask myself, what do I know about skiffy? What do I know about leg calvi? And I see like the leg are externally rotated. Oh yeah, right, the legs are externally rotated. No, it's nothing we don't see often in leg calvi. And I see, yeah, externally rotated, so it could be skiffy. So yeah, it doesn't work. I'm not saying that it worked for me 100% of the time, obviously, but it helped me, yeah, get like 50% of the questions correct when I stuck between answer choices. Yeah.
Good, excellent, very nice. Um, just generally speaking, what do you think was the resource or whatever you did that gave you the highest return on your time invested?
NBMEs. Just use AI and NBMEs. Spend your time, like someone said it before, and I like the name. You do an autopsy of the NBME. Break the NBME form and you do an autopsy. Literally, you just, like load it from back to back. Not necessarily memorize, because some people memorize the NBMEs. No, you don't have to memorize. I didn't memorize the NBMEs. I solved it only once. I did it even two passes. I just did one pass of NBME. But the one pass I did was literally making out every single info from that NBME. What clues they gave? Why did they want me to pick this and not that? Why other explanations is wrong? Why I made that mistake? Why I was confused between two answer choices? Everything. Those are the NBMEs well.
Good, good. Um, in the final 7 days before your exam day, or even the day before your exam day, just leading up to that last week, what did you do, and what do you think people should avoid?
The last 2 weeks, I did the latest four forms of NBMEs, and they showed me consistent score from 260 to 272. Uh, but the one thing I did different in those last 2 weeks is that I took 320 questions per day. And I think most people should do this because it helped me tremendously on exam day. I didn't feel any fatigue thanks to this. I saw a post online of someone who made this approach where he took NBME form and free 120 on the same day. So 200 questions plus 120, that's 320 questions per day. And I said, wow, that's actually a nice idea. Why should I try this, right? So I started this with your self-assessment 1 and 2. Both of them are 160, so that adds up to 320 questions. I took him back to back with an hour break total. Okay, that was at the start of the dedicated. And that was like, yeah, it works. Yeah, of course, you're gonna feel tremendous fatigue. Like you're gonna feel, oh my God, it's blurry vision. I felt even anxious, like, okay. And I told myself from an emotional standpoint, that's good. You're getting accustomed gradually to how you would feel on exam day. Like, you're not used to doing 200 questions on exam day. It suddenly became 320. That's more additional 120 questions. It's a lot. It's like 3 blocks. So yeah, I was like happy that I felt this way because eventually it's like running a marathon. The first time you run, you're gonna feel like I can't take my breath. I'm gonna die. But then one after another, you're gonna feel like, yeah, I'm gonna run additional 1 kilo, 2 kilos. That's similar concept. The mental stamina matters. Mental stamina plays like 50% of the score because most people, like, I know they would have got the higher score than they did. But the thing is, at the last 2 to 3 blocks on the real deal, they felt really tired because they didn't have the enough mental stamina. So mental stamina is very important. So my biggest advice, last 2 weeks, please do the simulations. Do the simulations. Gonna build up a mental stamina the last 2 weeks. You're gonna enter the exam like a beast. You're not gonna feel tired at all, and that's very important. It's very good for you. And also, I took the same snacks I took in the real deal, where I took them at home. I tried the protein bars. I even tried energy drinks. The energy drinks did work for me. Actually, it makes my heart, it gave me tachycardia. So I decided, no, I'm not gonna take energy drink on real deal. It didn't work for me at home. So it's good because you're seeing how your body responds to things. I should have, like the things that worked for me was enough sleep and protein bars. So on the real deal, I slept well and had protein bars. I didn't even, I had some caffeine, not even much higher than caffeine. Some people would love energy drinks. So you have to try that. You try yourself. Take NBME 14 plus all the free, you have 3 free 120s. Take them with the latest 3 forms, NBME 14, 15, and 16. Okay. And the last 2 weeks, or not even last week before the exam, but make it 2 weeks so you don't feel the time slide. And you do the simulations, it's going to build up your mental stamina. And of course, you're gonna eventually get accustomed. The last time I took NBME 16 was like 4 days out before my exam. I took NBME 16 and new free 120 back to back. And I was really like, like NBME 16 is really percent of the exam, new free 120. I hope this works out. But eventually I got like 89% on new free 120 and 272 on NBME 16. So that gave me a huge confidence boost. Like, yeah, I could do it. I did 20 questions with 1 hour break total on 2 exams that are supposed to be representative of the exam, and it worked well for me. But don't start with them. Okay, you just have to get practice with the other forms first. Okay, the mistake I made in the last 2 weeks that I didn't have a specific plan of what to do. I just knew that I had to do the NBMEs. But should I do anything else? Should I do this UWorld incorrects again, AMBOSS incorrects? Should I do CMS incorrects? I was really torn and I was in a dilemma. Should I do them or not? But to be honest, I don't think they're important. I think the important thing is you do the NBMEs the last 2 weeks. Even if you want to do NBME corrects, I think that's fine. Do the NBME corrects again. But don't do UWorld or AMBOSS because they're not representatives of the real deal. You have to get into the NBME mindset before the exam. The day before exam, I didn't do anything. Well rested. I think that's important. Didn't feel regret at all. It's very important to feel rested.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you definitely, those last 2 weeks, you tackled a lot of questions. Is there time to review those questions properly?
Yeah, at the end of the prep, you're like on fire, literally. The adrenaline rush, the exam is near, and I'm used to solve too many questions. Like the dedicated period I solved AMBOSS, I reached 120 questions per day. I did 3 forms of CMS forms per day. I started off, of course, with 40 questions or 30 questions of AMBOSS. One form of CMS was making me like dizzy, but eventually I reached a point where I could do more questions. The more you study, the more you feel like you're getting into the zone, right? It's like running, like I mentioned. You start running real slow, but then eventually things will catch up. So at the end of the prep, I didn't feel tired. I just felt burnout, but the adrenaline rush that the exam is near make me overcome this burnout. Okay, and of course I slept well. I care for my sleep. I think I'm always cared like I sleep at least 6 hours per night. Eat well, eat healthy. So that helps me like not feeling tired doing very huge number of questions in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, no. At the end of the prep, you're gonna see yourself in the Zoom.
Yeah. So was it just the sleep that you've done that avoid burnt out, or were there other things?
Like I didn't avoid any outing. Like when my friends have an outing, I would adjust to my schedule to go out with them. I would waste that opportunity. I even took a day off to go on a cruise at sea. It's okay. It's not gonna take off your first time. Like people think, like, no, I don't have much time. No, you have time. You're gonna make up time because it's gonna give you health boost. It's gonna, like I saw my friends. I went out, saw the sunlight. Even if you need sunlight, you need vitamin D. Like it's not good to spend time at home 24 hours for 7 days. It's not good for your health at all. Always try to take like even half a day per week just to take your mind off everything.
Good, good. So now it's test day. So how did you kind of handle, let's say, because obviously you might feel that you had bad blocks. How did you handle those?
I had bad blocks on the exam. Some questions felt like, what the hell is this? I was like, why are you doing this to me? I feel like the exam was trickier than NBMEs, and they give clues that I haven't seen before. It's similar scenarios, similar concepts, but they would add some twists, some plot twists. Like, hey, be careful, he has XX. Okay, so I was like, will that change my answer? I always take a step back. So the important thing is you take a step back. If that you feel to yourself like going into the panic mood and oh my god, the block is very hard, take a mental pause, step back. No, wait, what do you know about this? What do you know about this answer choice? Does really this new concept, a new clue matter, or should I just stick to the concept that I know from the NBMEs? Personally, I picked the concepts that I know from NBMEs. I didn't want to invent new things. I didn't want to like, oh yeah, I got this and got that. No, don't act smart. Okay,
Yeah,
don't act. Just pick the safe option.
good,
I
good.
think picking the safe option is a good strategy. Yeah, I mean, like, I got good score, alhamdulillah, on the exam. Like, I was like, did I do the right thing after the exam? Should I pick the safe option or the option that I think it may be the smarter one? No, don't act smart. They want you to think that you're acting smart, but actually a trap. Pick the safe option. Don't fall for distractors. They're mostly distractors. If the concept you saw on the exam are similar to the NBME, pick the one that you learned from NBME. That's a safe option.
Yeah,
Like, it's mostly basic stuff. They love basic stuff. They want you to think that something is wrong with patients, very complicated, but actually turns out the answer is just reassurance. It could be due to aging or something, you know, if the patient's old age, maybe this problem is due to aging. So yeah, they love basic concepts. They love the minimalistic approach. Always think least invasive before more invasive. Don't jump into the most invasive one. Okay. So yeah, this day, of course I slept well. I slept like 8 or 9 hours. I took my snacks, the protein bars, like I mentioned, the one that worked for me. Took the snacks that worked for me on practice days. Went to the exam center like 1 hour before the test. I didn't do anything. I just, drank water, entered the bathroom, washed my hands, washed my face. Just getting ready mentally, getting accustomed to the environment. I didn't open any notes at all. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. Okay. And yeah, just, like I did yoga, any meditation, just you got this. Keep reminding yourself, don't overthink, pick the safe option, be more straightforward. The exam will not the exam may be vague. And I told myself, this exam is vague or difficult than you think. Don't get scared. Pick the safest options that you can think of and move on. Okay. Try to simplify the question as much as you can. And one thing I noticed about the exam too, because most people have told me that the exam felt much longer than MBMEs, and the question stems are very long, and you have to read a lot of words. So I was mentally prepared for this. But actually, the exam, I think it was fair. The questions were not long. The questions were long, especially the history of present illness. But a piece of advice about this is read the history of present illness from downwards. See the questions first, and then you're gonna know what you want to look for. Okay. But for the rest of the questions, I don't. There are even questions that I got like 2 lines. There were 2 line questions literally, like in Viennese. So the distribution was fair in my opinion. It wasn't that long that like people mentioned. And of course, solving 7 to 20 questions per day maybe helped me like not feel like fatigued. And yeah, I was able to read the questions. Maybe doing lots of questions helped with better recognition, so I was able to see through the clues faster than other people. I don't know, but I'm just speaking from experience, and I think this helped definitely.
yeah, good, good. Just in general, how do you approach blocks? Because some people say 10 questions equals 15 minutes, and then the next 10 questions, 15 minutes. I'll
Yeah,
flag stuff, then come back to it later.
yeah. So at home and on the exam day, I was always finishing half, like if the question block is 40 questions in 60 minutes, I'll try to do 20 questions before 30 minutes. Okay. So like 20 questions, yeah, 20 questions, 30 minutes, the other 30 minutes, 20 questions. Sometimes I finish it in like 25 minutes. So I have 5 minutes in addition. So where I solve the other 20. To be honest, I begin the block, like the first 20 questions, I'm fresh. So things are moving fast. I was like able to finish it in like 20 minutes or 25 minutes. The other 20 questions, I feel like a little fatigued because I'm used to take a break in between every block. I never solved block back to back. I always take, even if 2 minutes block, 2 minutes break, I always take breaks. So I tend to get fatigued fast a little bit. So I have to work on this. So the first 20 questions were fresh. So I'd solve it in 25 minutes. And then the other 20 questions, take the rest of the block. That's fine because I feel fatigued. That's okay. Sometimes I have 5 minutes left or 10 minutes left of every block where I, look at the flagged questions. But the thing is, it's a two-sided sword. Why? Because you can, if you look at the flat questions, the ones that you're unsure of, most of the time your first instinct is right. Most of the time, you have to trust your first instinct. So sometimes it can feel like, no, don't look at the flat questions. Just end the block and add those 10 minutes to the break. That's better for you. And sometimes I think, no, I should look at the questions again. But most of the time, I change some answers, and I don't know if I change this to correct, incorrect or not, because most of the time at home when I change my answers, I change from correct to incorrect. Yeah, so I keep telling myself, just keep trusting your first instinct, man. Don't overthink. So I think sometimes looking at the flat questions doesn't help, except if you saw like really really hard evidence that you got it wrong. You didn't notice a clue that you didn't see the first time. The patient's hypotensive, you didn't see that. Okay, that way is very clear that you got the question wrong and change your answer. Other than that, don't change your answer. So yeah, just be careful when you look at the flat questions. Take the 55 minutes of the block for 40 questions. That's fine, and leave only 5 minutes for the flagged ones.
Excellent. Very good. Yeah. We definitely learned a lot from you. Got to really understand the mindset of a 270 plus score. If you had one message to the people, when it comes to this whole process, what would it be?
Uh, the one advice I always give to people, and I think people really understate this, is consistency, consistency, consistency. You're gonna feel tired, you're gonna feel burnout. You're gonna feel wonder what the hell am I doing at this point in my life? You're gonna feel like you lost a part of your soul. You know, all this is normal. If you started in a low position, low baseline, that's normal. If you feel like you're not understanding anything, that's normal. What's important thing is understand your weaknesses, work on them, and be consistent. Even on some days you feel like you're not able to study, you don't have to do 80 questions per day every single day. Okay? Then maybe a day you can do 80 questions, some days you can do 10 or 5. That's fine. What matters is you keep going, don't stop. Because if you stop, you're gonna have a hard time coming back. Don't ever stop. Consistency, consistency, consistency is very, very important. That most people look at the quantity, but I look at the quality. Okay, consistency.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Yusuf. We
Yeah,
definitely learned a lot from you, and I think you're a source of wisdom and inspiration for so many people. And we're definitely thankful for your time and your effort. Um, that's all for us today. We'll stay connected, and then if anyone has any questions, we'll try to connect them with you as well.
yeah, sure. I glad to be of help.
Of course. All right. Awesome. Thank
All
you.
right.
Uh,
Thank you.